prosecutors are not going to use discretion and get rid of these cases. I mean, at least not in the cases that I've been involved in. They're going to take it to trial unless it's taken from them by a judge approving a motion to dismiss it or finding that there's certain elements not existing. They're not going to do it because they're simply not going to put themselves in that sort of position of being that DA where they dismiss the case, especially not in this climate. So
Sure.
Unfortunately, that's where Mr. Harker's in.
I understand. Now, you're talking about the difference in resources between small and large police departments. They just recently have had essentially a taser gate with the former police chief of the Albuquerque Police Department retiring and then going to work for Taser, and then Taser subsequently landing one of the biggest contracts I've ever had for, amongst other things, lapel cameras. And then we find subsequent to that that in many cases where that might be incriminating to the police, there's suddenly no recording of that. And we've talked about that in the past. Now, in this particular case, however, at the grand jury, one of the things that was surprising was the fact that the witness did not testify, but there's also, as I understand, existing audio and video recordings that might have some bearing on the case that might help Shane Harger and his innocence. Or
that's my understanding, and we have yet, despite our request and granted, yesterday was really the first day of business since the grand jury proceeding. We've yet to receive a recording from the grand jury to find out really where things are. I mean, you have to understand that we're in the very preliminary stages of this case. Our first order of business right now is getting Mr. Harger out of jail. He's clearly not a threat to the community. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the time that they did between the inception of these allegations and taking a grand jury. I mean, we're talking over 6 months. He's got, financial and personal attachments to the community. He's clearly not a threat, and there isn't any reason to keep him incarcerated under such, a strict measure of bond.
Yeah, they have they have very high bail, and it's a cash-only bail, as far as I understand.
Cash only. So our first order of business is really to get Mr. Harger out of prison and get him out of jail and get him with his family, and then we'll start forming together our plan to effect a very aggressive and very proper defense.
Well, we picked up on this case, and we learned about it from the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, from Sheriff Mack, and I've talked to Shane Harger in a couple of interviews, and I actually met him at the Bundy Ranch. He was there. He traveled at his own expense because, like us, he was concerned about the abuses of force in that area. To me, he didn't seem like a cocky, arrogant person who's seeking attention. He was a very straightforward, very sincere person. When I met him personally, I know that he stood down there with the farmers, with the ranchers, with the people on horseback. He stood there as they were threatening to shoot us. He believed that they would shoot because certainly as Albuquerque and New Mexico has a history, they don't make idle threats. When the police say that they're going to shoot you in New Mexico, they frequently do. Sometimes they shoot you without giving you a warning, evidently. But he stood there nevertheless because he was concerned about people's rights. So what can people do to help Shane Harger at this point?
There are two things that people can do. One, they can openly express their support and belief that he is innocent and that he is a good guy. And Shane is a person who I'd leave my kids with this evening if he were out. I don't have a problem with that. And then two, unfortunately, because he's the sole provider for his family, he's going to need as much financial support as he can because, as you can imagine, mounting a defense in the face of such charges is fairly expensive. So any support that he can receive financially will help to help offset. Unfortunately, the sad reality is that legal expenses are they're expensive and they continue to climb, especially with more aggressive defense. So
is there some kind of a defense fund that's been set up for him?
My understanding is that their family members are in the process of putting that together right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for joining us. And as I said, I certainly don't believe that he's the type of person who would do this. He seemed to me to be a very sincere officer, exactly the opposite of what we see all too often, and that is officers who could care less about the Constitution, could care less about the rule of law. I think he's concerned for other people as he was for himself when he spoke back at the airport after multiple confrontations from the
I think that's a very accurate description of Mr. Harger. He's a good guy, and like I said, we're going to defend this aggressively, because if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Tom Grover.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to get some answers to some of those questions that were raised. Why didn't the alleged victim testify before the grand jury? Why weren't they shown the audio and video recordings? And why wasn't he given an arraignment date where he could turn himself in rather than stage a perp walk in front of all the networks? So I called the district attorney. That's Lemuel Martinez, the district attorney of the 13th District of New Mexico. He basically would not give me any information about what happened in the grand jury, saying that it was secret and closed. He wouldn't comment on anything, saying that the arraignment date and the amount of bail, the fact that it was an entirely cash bail, that was all set by the grand jury. Of course, we know that grand juries pretty much do what they're told. But if you want to follow this story, stay with us at InfoWars. We will be keeping abreast as to what's going on, not only with Shane Harger, but also with the many incidents in New Mexico and what's going on there with the police departments, with the rules of engagements there. If you're not a supporter of Prison Planet TV, please consider supporting our operation. It'll help you stay in touch with what's going on, developing news on a nightly basis, as well as access to all of Alex Jones's documentaries. 11 other people can share it with you simultaneously. That's 12 of you can be watching off of that one subscription, and there is a price break if you get an annual subscription. Well, that's it for tonight. Join us tomorrow at 11 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water.
I can taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does. Ugh.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
Yeah, it has that processed flavor to it.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water. Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your ProPure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.
As you know, for a long time, we have been warning you about the globalist plan to militarize our police and to stage and provocateur crises across the United States to bring in what can only be called a permanent state of martial law and political oppression. In the last month, I have warned you that the latest crisis Obama and his controllers want to stage is a race war in this country to be the cover for the MRAPs, the helicopters, the drones, the sound cannons to be rolled out against the American people in general. U.S. Army training to fight black Americans. Actual video up on InfoWars.com. I shot a 20-minute overdrive, almost 30-minute special report last night that aired after the nightly news. The news is always 30 minutes long, but when it's extended, when the main news ends, some stations are already carrying, not just affiliate, PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. We then go into, for just online viewers, an extra expanded overdrive, and we did a very important breakdown of this. It's regular Army training, battling black people in the drills. And I made a big deal about it when we saw some of this training a few years ago where it was only white people. So they're just training to attack certain ethnic groups. And again, we're not demonizing the military even here. They don't like what's going on. They're freaking out. This is a plan to divide and conquer this nation. It was 2 years ago, back on July 16th, 2012, that a public Army document was put out, confirmed to be authentic, where the U.S. Army admitted that they're training to confiscate guns from people who do not turn them in under orders. That was an earlier 2012 version of ATP 3-39 .33 civil disturbances. Then, in 2013, last year, the Army came out and released a public document about how to process Americans via their Social Security numbers into the FEMA camps or emergency centers under the Emergency Centers Establishment Act. Now, 3 days ago, last Friday evening, the U.S. Army released the then secret April 2014 updated version of the Civil Disturbances Secret Manual. The article is on INFOWARS.com with a link to Army.mil to read the document for yourself. This document details the most frightening example of treason I could ever imagine. IS or ISIS lines up their political enemies and shoots them. The Nazis shot unarmed civilians. Our military, who are good men and women on average, are being slowly twisted and inducted into this under the rubric of dealing with crises that the globalists themselves have created. The document publicly says they're preparing for full-scale riots across the U.S. and to use lethal force against unarmed, non-violent Americans, and how to shoot them in the spine or the heart or the testicles, depending on how you want to terrorize the public. You've noticed the Marines and Army have been doing mass zombie wave drills where they practice mowing down masses of unarmed people. And they say, don't worry, it's only in case zombies attack. That's how they dehumanize the mass of the public in the eyes of the military, is say, oh, they're just rats, they're just parasites. Again, the Nazis and the Soviets and others would liken their enemies to rats or animals as well. This is part of the dehumanization process. This new document openly talks about how to terrorize the public, how to shoot unarmed people. And it is the local police who are being federalized, who are being given the armored vehicles and the training and the uniforms. They have to go to Army-sponsored training classes where they're taught the force continuum, where they're taught civil disturbances, ATP 3-39.33. That's why they were aiming guns at Josh Owens, our reporter, in broad daylight, who was peacefully there videotaping in the press area. That's why they were shooting rubber bullets and tear gas at mainline reporters like Al Jazeera and arresting Washington Post reporters inside McDonald's who were there peacefully getting a hamburger, if you can call it that at McDonald's. Because this is to be a hardcore takeover. And the police and military are compartmentalized, just following orders. That's why it's important. That's Josh Owens right there on screen having the M4 pointed at him. That's why it's vital to understand this is about a federalization process. And DrudgeReport.com today linked to our article with video evidence proving the new Black Panther Party, the Black Ku Klux Klan, Al Sharpton, admitted FBI, and others are there orchestrating and running the violent demonstrations and the destabilization that's happening. We've seen looting now over the weekend, police getting shot at. This is an attempt to start a civil war. I know you've heard this about 1,000 times from me or more because this has been the plan. They're even putting out the diagrams, and we'll scroll up and show you, of where to shoot people. Again, this is really happening. So they want to get the military and the police federalized in a war with the American people. First they primed the pump claiming it's for Al-Qaeda. Now they say, no, it's not for Al-Qaeda, it's for the inner cities. But the real training is for the Tea Party and gun owners and returning veterans. So all of you good old boys that are going along with this saying, well, it's the out of control inner cities, the welfare class, we got to do this to keep everybody safe. You are literally putting your neck in the noose for the takeover. Obama has massively increased the police state funding for domestic operations, and they are suckering everyone right now. Infowars.com is the leader in exposing this. Whether it was NSA spying or military training to take guns, we've told you the truth. We have the track record, and we're showing you the documents. There will be trolls denying this even exists. There will be trolls saying no guns were taken during Katrina. This is all a globalist attempt to maneuver the country into martial law and to get the police and military and public to go along with it. I'm all for law and order. But we live in a day and age where the Democrats are arresting Rick Perry, arresting Dinesh D'Souza,